You are a really pivotal part of the Woodfall story. I mean, your relationship with Woodfall actually predates Girl with Green Eyes, doesn't it?
I was camera operator on Tony's The Long Distance Runner and Taste of Honey. And I was sort of brought up with Woodfall.
So Tony Richardson, who obviously one of the co-founders and the director of many of the first wave of those films, what was so special about him and about your working relationship with him?
Well, Tony, I'd done a lot of... I'd been camera operator on a lot of movies, you know. I was John Huston's camera operator for a while, and quite a few other directors, good, bad and indifferent. and Tony was a sort of revelation, really, because he was what you might call anti-establishment, and he loved to be different, and I think that shows in his movies, you know, very much.
I mean, did it feel, I suppose, both on screen and also in Britain at that moment, it's like it was a new era and there was a sort of new energy going on, as I say, in filmmaking and in culture generally in the early 60s?
Well, I think the 60s was a time of great change, wasn't it, in the arts, in lifestyle, in everything, and but certainly in cinema. A whole new era of movies appeared at that point, and some of the less awful films made in Pinewood at that time, not now, I hastily say, but the sort of Springtime in Mayfair sort of movie that were going around at the time. But I think through Woodfall we wanted to do something quite different. Wanted to break the rules and also break the editing pattern on movies, you know, which had become very, very sort of set in concrete. And the editors we had, we encouraged them to do all sorts of innovations that could be possible.
So it sounds like from what you're saying that the Woodfall films, they were Woodfall films. They weren't just Tony Richardson films for all his greatness. There was a kind of sense of collaboration. So you as camera operator would still be involved creatively in the rest of the film as well.
Oh yes, I suppose it's a kind of wonderful job being a camera operator. You were close to the actors, and it's a job that needed a sixth sense of timing. Otherwise you were lost. And I loved being behind the camera. It was just, I found it innovating and wonderful, and be working next to directors. So when eventually I started directing myself, I was very familiar on the film floors. You know, I knew a lot how a film floor was run, and knew what the other guys were doing, and it was a familiar field to me.
Well, tell us a little bit about that decision to go into directing yourself with Girl with Green Eyes. I wonder whether that was something that you had wanted to do and you'd approached Tony Richardson, or was it the other way around? Was it that having done such astonishing camera work, actually, you know, on the early Woodfall films, that they came to you?
Oh yeah, I really wanted to be a director, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't see it happening, having worked on cameras for so long. But Tony gave me my big break, and he promoted me from camera operator to director. He entirely changed my life in one moment. It was a wonderful thing he did, and I have an unpayable debt to him.
Why this project? I mean, why did you choose to make your debut as a director with this film in particular? What was it about the story that particularly drew you in?
Well, I don't think it was my choice. It sort of came my way, which was wonderful, because it was the script was by Edna O'Brien,
sure.
And I used to sit and chat with Edna about the sort of locations we could use and all the rest of it. And Edna is wonderfully erudite and bright, and she wrote the most wonderful script.
We have to be so careful, don't we? Because people obviously, I think many people will be about to see the film for the first time, so we can't speak in that much detail about the story. I want to talk about the casting. Woodfall is obviously one of the things it's famous for is this revolutionary attitude towards young actors. And we have Albert Finney breaking through, we have Tom Courtenay breaking through. Now, Rita Tushingham from Taste of Honey had already broken through. Lynn Redgrave was less familiar at that point. So I wanted to ask you about working with each of those in turn. We can see them there. Lynn Redgrave, I mean, as an actress, how was your relationship with her on set?
Lynn's great strength as an actress was playing comedy. She had a wonderful sense of comedy, and Rita and Lynn, in between shooting, had a sort of double act they kept going, and I had to calm down the roars of laughter that were coming across the set as Rita and Lynn acted out various things of their own, but it was a good relationship for Rita, you know.
I think, and you'll notice that on screen, actually, you can see there's this immediate rapport. It's chemistry, really, chemistry of friends, I suppose.
That's right. And Lindy was very tall, and Rita was quite short. So there was this slightly, it's a sort of long comparison, Laurel and Hardy feel between them, you know, because Lindy was really very tall,
sure,
and towered above Rita.
And Rita, of course, at that point, Taste of Honey had made her a very big star. I mean, so there was a sense, I think, at that point in the early 60s that Rita was a big name. But she doesn't strike me as the kind of actress who would have arrived with an ego on set.
Oh, she had no ego at all. I actually was with Tony Richardson when he was doing tests to cast that lead part. And we had a camera set up in a room, and Tony interviewed hopeful girls from all over England before Rita walked in. And Rita always claimed that, I mean, she had a wonderful face with these huge eyes. And as far as I remember, he asked her what she'd done, and she said, I played the back part of a horse in pantomime. And she was very inexperienced as an actress, really, but she had an absolutely natural talent. I mean, she was one of those. It was a sort of gift from the gods.
And people will see. I mean, there's a whole range of astonishing performances, I think, in this film. I wonder how closely you were working with the actors. I mean, were you the kind of director who who gave the actors their stage essentially and let them get on with it, or were you talking to them and coaxing these performances out of them?
Well, I think that depends on the actor, really. I mean, it's a sort of instinct that directors ought to have. There's some actors that you think, oh, leave well alone, let them just do it, you know? And or other actors want a flood of notes, or they think you're not doing your job. So, but with Rita didn't need any. I mean, she was well prepared, knew her lines and everything. Then, of course, there was Peter Finch, you know. I was quite amazed that Peter took the part, because he was quite a big star in those days. And he was working with two girls who were much less famous than him. But he was absolutely wonderful, you know. I really enjoyed it, I think. It was a different sort of venue for him.
There's an astonishing sort of balance between the three of them, isn't there, as characters and as actors. They've got this real presence. It somehow, the three of them work together. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Peter was, how can I put this without offence? Peter...
You're among friends, it's fine.
Peter would appear in the morning slightly red-eyed, may I put it that way. And he, amazingly, I mean, I think he'd been out at night here and there in Dublin and everything. But he knew his lines absolutely. He'd done his homework somewhere, somehow, and we tried not to look into those red eyes too much.
I mean, I was going to say there's a very youthful energy to the film, and so a lot of that is in the performances, and a lot of that is in the way, the rhythm that you've put the film together with. And I wonder, when you were shooting, again, having worked as a camera operator, are you thinking about the edit of the film? Because a lot of the kind of the pep of the film is the way it's edited, and it's got this real pace and this real rhythm to it.
It was a beautifully edited movie, wasn't it? You know, it was, I think, in a way, directors slightly edit as they go along, if I may use that expression. If you want to control the editing, you just cut shots before they run too long, so it forces a sort of cut to take place. Sometimes we did that, and sometimes not.
One of the things I think people are noticing, I'm sure people here tonight have seen the other Woodfall films in the season, is how much they seem to speak to us now and how timeless they actually feel, and they feel very, very contemporary. What is it you think about, well, Girl with Green Eyes specifically, but also the other Woodfall films you worked on, that gives them this quality where we can sit here in 2018 and they still feel so vital and they still feel like they speak to us?
Well, I think that was Tony Richardson. Woodfall Films grew out of the theatre, and Tony had been at the Royal Court Theatre, and Tony had been directing a lot of plays there. It's hard to remember now that the Royal Court was the only theatre presenting what you might call really modern plays, and the rest of Theatreland was controlled by Binky Beaumont, otherwise known to those people with a wonderful sense of malice as the avant-derrière of British theatre.
So it was a revolutionary time in that case. It was a time of change.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the 60s really was, in many of the other arts too,
We've talked a lot about the film. I think it's probably time that you saw the film, but please, it's a very special occasion to have him with us. Please join me in thanking Desmond Davis.